My concubine's sister hanged herself to death on my wedding night. The prince thought she was unlucky and ordered his men to grind her bones and scatter her ashes. But after he ascended the throne, the first thing he did was to depose me from my position as queen and exterminate my entire family. Before he died, he strangled me and said that if I hadn't insisted on marrying him, the person he loved deeply would not have died. Starting a new life, I decided to help this pair of wild lovebirds get together. After all, how could being a queen be more elegant than being a female general? 1. I was born into a family of generals. I offered advice to my father and brothers and defeated the enemy. Your Majesty distributed rewards according to merit, and at the celebration banquet promised that I could choose a good son-in-law at will. The ministers at the banquet were whispering to each other, and their eyes were all focused on Crown Prince Lu Chuanzhong. Everyone thought that I would ask His Majesty for permission to marry my childhood sweetheart without hesitation. But I stood there in a daze, my mind full of a scene in my previous life when Lu Chuanzhong ascended the throne and stabbed me through with a long sword. I fell on the steps of the enthronement ceremony, watching Lu Chuanzhong place Jiang Ying's tablet on the queen's phoenix chair and recount their years of old love. It turned out that he had been secretly having an affair with Jiang Ying long before we got married. But my request for marriage at the celebration banquet separated this pair of illicit lovers. Jiang Yingheng died on my wedding night with an unborn baby in her belly. Under pressure from the Jiang family's power, he endured it and even ordered his men to grind him to dust to please me. After enduring for many years, he finally got his revenge. He said, Jiang Rulian has been jealous since childhood and forced her half-sister Jiang Ying to death. Now she is deposed from the position of crown princess and sentenced to death. He said, the Jiang family has held military power for generations. They have abused their power to commit evil and harbor rebellious intentions. The entire family should be executed. He said, I only have one wife in this life, Jiang Ying. After I die, I will be buried with her in the same tomb as her in the imperial mausoleum. Everyone was shocked by the new emperor's deep affection and forbearance, and everyone was heartbroken by Jiang Ying's loyalty and determination. We have done everything we can to make our Jiang family get what they deserve, and everyone is happy. But who would believe that it was Lu Chuan who promised me that he would only have me in his life, and I never knew about his affair with Jiang Ying. Otherwise, with my naturally proud character, how could I be willing to marry a man who already has someone in his heart? Would I become the villain who breaks up a good marriage in a storybook? Who else remembers that the ancestor of my Jiang family died on the battlefield, his sons guarded the border, and our family has been loyal and brave for generations, but they were charged with the serious crime of treason, and none of the 370 people were spared. Poor old man of mine, who helped the late emperor build half of the empire, had his spine broken, his head hung in the military camp, his body trampled by millions of people, and was recorded in history books as a traitor and a scourge, and was condemned by later generations. Jiang Ying is innocent. Do I deserve to be deceived? Did the Jiang family deserve to die?
Why? 2.
I looked up at Lu Chuanzhong, who was standing high above me. I saw that his face was gloomy and his eyes were fixed on me like needles. I clenched my fists, pinching my palms until they bled, and hatred burned through my body like a raging fire. In my previous life, I was blinded by love and ended up hurting myself and my family. If I had my life to live again, I would never make the same mistake again. The next moment, I bowed and said in a loud voice, I am not greedy for gold and silver, nor do I envy honors and honors. I have only admired His Royal Highness the 7th Prince for a long time. I beg for your Majesty's grace. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole room was in an uproar. Everyone looked at me in disbelief, including Lu Chuanzhong. It is known throughout the capital that the eldest daughter of the Jiang family has been in love with the prince for many years. Even His Majesty has already tacitly agreed to this marriage and was just waiting for me to propose it today, and then he would naturally agree to it. Unexpectedly, something went wrong on my end. His Majesty's eyes flashed with surprise. My 7th son is mediocre in both civil and military affairs and has made little contribution to the country. Moreover, his mother's family is humble, and his late mother was just a tribute girl from a foreign country. I'll ask you again, have you thought it through? I turned my eyes and looked at the seventh prince Lu Heji, who was being belittled by his own father. He looked indifferent the whole time, as if he was out of the matter. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. It was indeed the dormant snake that dealt Lu Chuan a heavy blow in the previous life. Lu Heji's mother was of humble status, but was favored by the emperor. But she was beautiful but had a tragic fate and died when he was very young. Since then, Lu Heji's status plummeted. Later, he asked to go to Qianan Temple to practice asceticism and only returned not long ago. It can be said that apart from his good looks, he has no outstanding qualities. It never attracted Lu Chuanzhong's attention. But such a low-key person has actually been developing his power in secret for a long time. He lies dormant like a poisonous snake, and when he does make a sound, it will be a surprise. In his previous life, when His Majesty was passing on the throne, he dealt Lu Chuan a heavy blow. If it weren't for the strong support of my mother's family, saving Lu Chuan from danger, it would be hard to say who would succeed in taking the throne. In this life, if I want Lu Chuanzhong to lose everything, I must find an ally for myself. Lu Heji is the best choice. So even though he hates me so much, I will still give it a try. I bowed again, solemnly speaking, Your Highness the Seventh Prince, I truly admire you. Heaven and earth are my witness. I lowered my head and noticed keenly that Lu Heji put down his wine glass and glanced at me quietly. The gaze was deep and burning, as if there were complex emotions surging in it, but it flashed by and could not be seen clearly. When I looked back and our eyes were about to meet, he instantly looked away. Before I could take a closer look, His Majesty waved his hand in boredom. I thought that you and the prince grew up together and should be in love with each other. But now it seems that you are just like the moon and the ditch, and you are not destined to be together. That's all. It's as you wish. He didn't even ask Lu Heji what he thought, and it was obvious that he really didn't care about his son. No matter what, Your Majesty has spoken the truth, and the marriage is finalized and cannot be changed. The court officials began to discuss, and various forces were whispering. Discussing my marriage changes will change the situation in the court. They looked back and forth between me, the prince, and Lu Heji, as if they could smell the coming of a storm. This time, Lu Chuanzhong didn't glare at me, but his face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. I felt like I had lost a great helper, and I was extremely heartbroken and gnashing my teeth in hatred. 3. After the banquet, everyone left, in front of the corridor outside the hall. Lu Chuanzhong grabbed my hand angrily, his face full of disappointment, and started scolding me. Rulian, why are you so willful? You clearly like me, so why are you in the palace today? I interrupted him directly, without a trace of expression on my face. I am already engaged. Your Highness, please be careful with your words. Lu Chuanzhong's eyes were full of hatred and coldness, and he squeezed my hand so hard that it hurt. Rulian, you and Lu Heji have only known each other for a few days. How can there be any true love? We have been childhood sweethearts for so many years. Have you forgotten everything? I know you blame me for ignoring you, but if you had even a little bit of the gentleness and consideration of an ordinary woman, how could I treat you like this? In the past, even if I ignored you, you were happy with it. Why have you become so cold-blooded today? You have no sympathy for others and no regard for our friendship. Don't you know how many people are coveting my position as the crown prince? Without the support of your father and brother, how can I survive? Rulian, you have changed. You have become a fickle woman who is infatuated with others. Lu Chuanzhong glared at me with a blaming look, speaking harsh words in a tone full of regret, hitting me on the head. If it were in my previous life, I would have admitted my mistake long ago. But now, I just smiled faintly and shook my head, with infinite alienation in my eyes. Am I not gentle and considerate enough? Am I not considerate enough? The previous queen died early, and although Lu Chuanzhong was a legitimate son, he had no relatives to rely on, and he had more than a dozen brothers who were waiting for an opportunity to act. This made him sensitive and suspicious. When we were young, we studied together in the academy. I felt sorry for his frail body, but he insisted on being the first in everything, studying all night long, working so hard that his face turned pale. I pleaded for him, took him on horseback to the suburbs, found food and entertainment for him among the people, and racked my brains to make him laugh. But one afternoon, when I went to find him to play with a kite, I overheard him having a private conversation with a friend. He said that my behavior was rude and not at all like a lady, that I was not good at poetry or songs, and that I spent all day learning riding and shooting for men, which was simply lawless. At the table, everyone was drinking and chatting about me, but he was actually laughing happily. Look, this is the person I once loved. He took my wholehearted, genuine, passionate love as his due, and then discarded it like a worn-out shoe after using it. I put down my favorite sword for him and was willing to learn the female precepts and rules for him. But the more I gave, the more he seemed to have something on me and was putting me on the spot. But he only kept Jiang Ying's little favor in his heart. In his mouth, I became a lowly person who wanted power. What Jiang Ying gave him was the purest and truest love without any selfish interests, which was worth him to cherish for the rest of his life. I gave my true heart to the wrong person and was kept in the dark for 13 years, and now I have become a laughingstock to the whole world.
4.
Thinking of this, my eyes were like ice and my words were like thorns, one sentence after another. If your highness likes ordinary women who are gentle and considerate, then go find an ordinary woman who is gentle and considerate. Why are you entangled with me now? You pretend to be so noble, but you're just trying to save the power you have gained because you feel sorry for losing it. You are really despicable. Before, I was young and naive, and I threw my affection away. Now, after being blown by the cold wind of the Qianqing Palace, my eyes have naturally recovered and my mind has become clear. I can tell who is a jackal, a tiger, or a leopard, and who is my ideal husband. My voice was full of sarcasm, and I watched Lu Chuanzhong's face getting darker and darker with a smile. That face that once moved my heart so much now looks so hideous. I looked him up and down and said, looking at the crown prince's manners and behavior, it is really unbearable to look at. On the contrary, the seventh prince is handsome, polite, and I like him more than you in every way. I just regret that I didn't like him earlier. Lu Chuanzhong was so angry that he wanted to pull me away. I didn't wait for him to succeed, and I shouted, Someone, someone, someone. How dare the crown prince flirt with a lady in public? I have always been naughty and don't care about so-called reputation. I say whatever I want to say. In the past, it was because I liked him that I tolerated him in everything and acted humble. In fact, I am the daughter of a general who controls the military power of the world. Even Lu Chuanzhong can't do anything to me. For example, now, he can only glare at me and curse, you bitch. So what if she's a shrew? As long as it feels good. If there weren't so many people here, I really wanted to put a bag on Lu Chuan and beat him up. But what I didn't expect was that I was just trying to scare him, but he actually called someone over. The seventh Prince Lu he knew. Under the palace lanterns, Lu Heji's facial features were deep. He seemed to glance at me with a hint of smile in his eyes. I felt a little embarrassed, and I didn't know how much of what I said just now had entered his mind. Lu Heji held Lu Chuanzhong's hand, his expression cold and captivating. Brother Emperor, this is my fiancé. Please respect yourself. He has Western ancestry and is much more important than Lu Chuan. He looks quite fierce when he has no expression on his face. In this comparison, Lu Chuanzhong is much weaker in momentum. He was forced to let me go, veins popped out on his forehead, and he was obviously very angry, but he forced a twisted smile. He glared at Lu Heji and said, Good, very good. I never knew when the relationship between the seventh brother and Rulian became so close. Gu and Rulian grew up together, so I know her best. She has always been uninhibited and doesn't follow the rules. She may like you today, but forget you tomorrow. Don't take a woman like this seriously, seventh brother. I frowned, looking contemptuous. How can you compare to your highness's fickleness, changing sides? Everyone knows that the prince is a romantic man. Apart from Jiangning, with whom I had an affair secretly, I already had several concubines in the Guang Palace and many confidants outside. How dare you mock me? Does being a woman mean that you must be kept in seclusion, marry blindly, and be bound by the ethics and morals of your husband's family for your entire life? Lu Heji used respectful words, but his expression did not show weakness at all. He stared at the prince coldly and said, "Thank you for your advice, my royal brother. However, I think the girl from the Jiang family is very good, the best in the world. Otherwise, I would not agree to this marriage." On the contrary, my royal brother, you have repeatedly slandered a little girl, which is really unmannerly. If my royal brother continues to pester me, don't blame me for being rude. Lu Chuanzhong was the first to be defeated. He snorted coldly, and before leaving with his hands behind his back, he deliberately said something disgusting to me. "Rulian, you will regret it sooner or later, so don't come crying and beg me then." Ask him? I just hate myself for being blind. I should have realized long ago that he was such a selfish, power-hungry villain. No matter how good your identity or appearance is, it is still dirty and smelly inside. There is nothing wrong with my love, but my blindness is the problem. I give it to the wrong person.
5.
I turned to look at Lu Heji and saluted stiffly. "Thank you, seventh prince, for your help." He spoke for me just now, and even if he didn't mean it from the bottom of his heart, it would be a lie to say that I wasn't touched. There's just work to do. I seized the opportunity and gave him a token of my love and said to him, "What you have done today has tied us together in the same boat. I know that your highness is not an ordinary person. Now that things have come to this, why don't you cooperate with me and pretend to get married? When things are settled, we can find a good partner later." Lu Heji accepted it.
He was indeed a smart man.
The cold wind blew, and my thin palace skirt swayed and trembled. "It's cold." Lu Heji's tone was cold. He took the cloak, stepped forward, and draped it over my shoulders. The faint scent of cedar immediately covered my whole body. His gaze was too invasive. It was rare for me to be so close to a man. I turned my head away and waited for him to tie the ribbon, and my white jade earring swayed. Lu Heji tied it very slowly, almost tortuously. He restrained himself and withdrew his hand, retreating to a safe distance. His voice was calm but mixed with grievance, and his eyes were gentle. Yet there was an undercurrent. "I haven't seen you for years. You seem to be alienated from me. I am grateful for your care during my studies." I looked at his handsome face for a long while before I recalled some old stories. When Lu Heji was a child, he was as thin as a girl and was often bullied in the academy. I have never tolerated bullying since I was a child, so I would always go up and beat those aristocratic children away. As time went by, he liked to follow me. I just treated him as an extra little tail and protected him together with my sisters at home. Those days when we wore red shirts with golden threads, rode horses to the capital, and sold wine by the railings were so full of vigor and vitality. I believe that the world is nothing but swords and military strategies, all in one hand. Looking back, it seemed like a dream. After my family was destroyed in my previous life, I became confused and made many failed suicide attempts, living in a daze all day long. When the palace servants saw that I was disheveled and haggard, they all treated me with disdain, and bullying and beating were commonplace. I am too lazy to resist, and only occasionally, when I am clear-headed, will I recall those things that happened back then. I thought I had forgotten it completely, but as soon as he mentioned it, I remembered it. The wind got into my eyes. After a while, I lowered my eyes and said, "Life is fleeting, but the past is in the past. Your Highness does not need to worry about it." Lu Heji, with his body covered in autumn frost, suddenly pulled me out of my hectic years. "Rulian, don't be sad. His embrace is too warm, as if I had secretly tried 1,000 times before I dared to reach out my hand, but it is clear that we should not be so familiar with each other. In my previous life, after I got engaged to the prince, he suddenly began to hate me for no apparent reason. When he saw me, He frowned and left without even saying hello. I don't know how I had offended him. To avoid trouble, I started to walk around him. Now that I'm not engaged to the prince, he doesn't hate me anymore. I have never been good at guessing people's minds, so I won't worry about it too much. I guess it's because I've always had a bad reputation, so he hates me for that, just like Lu Chuanzhong. It's just that now that the engagement has been confirmed, I have to put on a good face, which is also human nature.
6.
The wind stops and people calm down. In the carriage, I took off the cloak and handed it to the maid Xiaowan. The first step of the plan went smoothly, and now it was my good sister's turn. Xiaowan massaged my shoulders, observed my expression, and hesitated and muttered, "New Year's Day is approaching, and the second lady has invited you to attend the Lantern Festival after the New Year's Day banquet. Miss, I always feel that she has bad intentions. Do you really want to go?" Of course I knew there must be something fishy going on at that Lantern Festival. Jiang Ying spent several years seducing Lu Chuanzhong. Judging from the time, she should be 3 months pregnant now, and she must be worrying about how to make this public. But I am not worried. After all, it is still unknown whether I can still participate in this Lantern Festival. In my previous life, at the New Year's Day banquet, an assassin attempted to assassinate the prince. I blocked an arrow for him, and was ill for a long time because of it. When I went to see him after I recovered from my illness, he instead said that I only knew how to avoid suspicion, which made him feel disappointed. It was only after the death of the previous life that I found out that Lu Chuanzhong was frightened and fell ill, and it was only under Jiang Ying's care that he gradually recovered. While I was enduring the pain and fantasizing that my childhood sweetheart would be grateful for the life-saving friendship and fulfill his promise to love only me in this life. Little did I know that he was so affectionate with my half-sister that he had completely forgotten about my efforts. This time, I will definitely not save Lu Chuanzhong again. I want to see, without my obstruction, whether it is true as Lu Chuanzhong said that they will be able to achieve success and get the blessings of the whole world. I leaned over and told Xiaowan to make my breaking of engagement known to everyone in the capital. She looked at me in shock, but her loyalty and good manners made her digest the message quickly and do as I asked. Soon, the rumor spread throughout the capital. The original version said that I had no talent or virtue, and the prince was disgusted with me and refused to accept the marriage, and everyone made a laughingstock of me. But later on, the news gradually changed, saying that the prince and the concubine of the Jiang family had developed feelings for each other and were secretly having an affair. I was chilled to the point of cutting my losses in time. Everyone sighed and talked. Jiang Rulian has been infatuated with the prince for several years, but Jiang Ying has no regard for sisterhood and has gotten together with the prince. In my opinion, she is not a good person either. Isn't it said that Jiang Ying is a model of a concubine's daughter from an aristocratic family? In fact, she is just a sycophantic person, nothing more than that. The world is always like this. Sisters fight with each other, women kill each other out of jealousy, and all the mistakes are the women's fault. The prince who is playing two-timing women got the reputation of being a playboy, but it was enviable. At that time, men and women were very cautious about each other, and it was especially taboo for unmarried ladies to have contact with men outside their families. Since childhood, Jiang Ying has loved to compare herself with me and establish a good reputation for herself as a virtuous and noble person. The more this is the case, the more likely this erotic rumor will spread far and wide. Xiaowan said gloatingly. The second young lady was very worried at home. She always spread bad things about the young lady before, and now she finally got her retribution. In both of my lives, Xiaowan has always been genuinely worried about me. In my previous life, I suspected that she was alienating our sisterhood and neglected Xiaowan at the instigation of Jiang Ying. Later, she was the only one who entered the palace with me, and she also died here, a tragic death. In the past few days, under my deliberate arrangements, what Jiang Ying had done in the past was gradually exposed in the mansion. It's just that she pretended to be too nice, so my parents still tolerated her. But there is always a limit to patience. They are very dissatisfied with the broken engagement and are ready to explode. 7. The time for the outbreak soon arrived. On the day of the New Year's Day banquet, lanterns filled the sky and luo qi was everywhere. The noble ladies and gentlemen gathered in the entertainment center, drinking and having fun, in an atmosphere of joy and indulgence. However, the front line was losing ground, and the soldiers were freezing cold and couldn't even get a hot meal. It is said that the emperor will attend the banquet in person, and he will go to the Nantian Pavilion in person to pray for the front line, and the assassination will also take place at that time. When I arrived, Jiangning was chatting and laughing with the ladies and was laughing at me behind my back for being illiterate, having rude manners, and having no aristocratic manners. They said that Jiangning was more like the legitimate daughter of the general's mansion, and I was not worthy at all. No wonder His Royal Highness the Crown Prince didn't like me, but liked Jiangning. When talking about this, bursts of laughter broke out among the flowers. Jiangning looked pleased with herself. Her beautiful eyes turned, and she suddenly glanced at me. She smiled and said, "Keep your voice down. Sister will be sad if she hears you."
Haha.
I walked up to him and said, "I'm not that sad, but if you know you're quarreling, just shut up." Jiang Ying's pretty face darkened, and her supporters beside her angrily said, "Jiang Rulian, why are you making things difficult for my concubine sister?" I slapped her in the face and said, "You know the difference between legitimate and illegitimate children. Who do you think you are? How dare you criticize me? In the previous life, I was law-abiding, but now I am bullied by everyone. In this life, I will do as they wish and become Jiang Rulian, the bully in the rumors. You know what? It really feels good." The prince came over in his casual clothes, and his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Rulian, what are you talking about?" In his previous life, he avoided talking to me about it. Now that he no longer has the support of my Jiang family, he realizes that he cannot hold on to the position of crown prince. He was anxious and sent people to the mansion several times to ask for peace, which was very shameless. Jiangming acted like a weak willow and forced a smile at Lu Chuanzhong. "It's nothing. My sister is just making fun of me. It happens all the time at home. Your Highness doesn't need to worry." I spread my hands and said, "Just now there were dogs barking on the boat. One dog barked, and the other dogs followed suit. It was a funny scene. Rulian just thought it was funny." Jiang Ying could no longer maintain her aggrieved expression and stared at me coldly. Everyone present is a smart person who wouldn't understand my analogy. But the prince did not defend Jiang Ying as he did in the past. He just coughed and pretended not to hear. It seems that even if I hadn't prevented them in this life, these two people would not have been in love with each other until death.
8.
At the end of the banquet, the emperor indeed went to the Nantian Pavilion in person. I saw river lanterns flickering and a cluster of fireworks suddenly shot into the sky. Someone screamed, "Assassin!" A large group of masked men in black rushed up, and the guests were thrown into chaos. Lu Chuanzhong collapsed to the ground in shock. He had lived a life of luxury and had never seen such a scene before. However, Lu Hezhi remained calm in the face of danger, drew his sword and blocked the emperor, shouting, "Protect the emperor!" Someone set a fire. The copper pillars collapsed, and the silk curtains burned fiercely. In the chaos, the assassin approached Jiang Ying, and she screamed in fear. Between life and death, he actually pushed Lu Chuanzhong beside him out. Lu Chuanzhong pinched Jiang Ying's neck, his eyes red, looking at her in disbelief. This woman is as kind as a white lotus in his mind. "Bitch, you want to kill me? I gave up the power of the Jiang family for you, and you treat me like this?" The anger that had been suppressed during this period of time finally erupted. Jiang Ying was tied up by his palms, and half of her pale face was covered with slap marks, which looked nothing like her original graceful appearance. "Your Highness, ahem. I didn't mean it." At this time, they're still arguing. It's totally stupid. I stood on a high place, maintaining order with Lu Hezhi, and had a clear view of everything in the corner. Wonderful, wonderful. Not only are there dogs barking, but there are also dogs biting each other. While Lu Chuanzhong and Jiang Ying were still struggling, an assassin suddenly rushed towards him. He rolled over to avoid the attack, letting the knife pierce Jiang Ying's shoulder. Lu Chuanzhong had a grim expression on his face. He quietly and coldly watched Jiangning fall to the ground in pain. Her face was distorted with pain, and she was screaming and shouting, with no composure at all. That's the kind of person he is. The depth of love and the intensity of hatred often all happen in a moment. I winked at Lu Hezhi and said, "Don't worry. The fun is yet to come. Your Highness will need to take action then." Lu Hezhi looked cold, but his eyes were eager. "If you need me, I will do my best to help you." I was satisfied and put on an anxious look. Just as I was about to rush out to start acting, I heard Lu Hezhi suddenly ask hesitantly, "Is your hand okay?" That day, the prince pinched my hand until it turned purple. He was considerate and sent someone to deliver ointment. I didn't expect that he still cares about me today. I was quite surprised and waved my hand in front of his eyes. "I'm not a delicate little girl. I've recovered a long time ago. I have been in the army since I was young, and my hands are covered with scratches from weapons. They are not like the slender jade fingers of the ladies in the paintings." However, Lu Hezhi lowered his eyes and dared not look, his ears turned red. After a while, he whispered, "In my heart you are." I lowered my head awkwardly, rushed out without answering, and shouted, "My sister's injured? Call the doctor."
9.
Inside the room, my parents rushed over in a hurry. Aing, are you okay?" After years of living together, they still find it difficult to give up their old feelings. The assassination attempt at the banquet had just been quelled, and the emperor was furious and ordered a thorough investigation. At this moment, news came out that a concubine's daughter of a general had been assassinated. So, under my guidance, a large group of people gathered at the door of the wing room again. After the old doctor took her pulse, she glanced at me inconspicuously. He looked embarrassed and stroked his beard. "Madam, your daughter is fine, but I have something to say. I don't know whether I should say it or not." My mother said anxiously, "Doctor, just tell me what you want to say." So, the imperial physician slowly told Jiangning the news of her pregnancy. For a moment, the whole audience was stunned. Who could have thought that Jiangning, who had been well-educated, gentle, and kind since childhood, would be so shocking as to secretly have a tryst with a man, and even then, amid the whispers, my parents already felt ashamed. Suddenly, a maid rushed out and knelt down. "General and Madam, please help me." She was Jiangying's maid and had been bribed by Xiao Wen a long time ago. Now she came out to add the final fuel to the drama tonight. She was crying and banging her head loudly. She said that Jiangning usually beat and scolded her and threatened her to do things that were not good for me. My bad reputation was also spread by Jiangying's instructions. She also secretly cursed our family to die early. There are so many things like this that I can't finish talking about them all at once. The more my parents listened, the more heartbroken they became, until their expressions gradually became cold and calm. The maid then said something even more shocking. The child turned out to be the crown prince. It turns out that Jiangning was jealous of her sister being favored by the crown prince and had secretly planned to seduce Lu Chuanzhong a few years ago. What he thought was love at first sight and a fleeting glimpse were nothing but traps set in advance. In the crowd, Lu Chuan's face sank into the water. He was completely disgraced today, and tomorrow, he and Jiangning would become a laughingstock to the whole world. The maid bowed slowly and presented a jade pendant with both hands. It was printed with the words "Eastern Palace Token" and was obviously the prince's. The assassination tonight was also ordered by the 2nd Mississippi. She said that if I could kill the young lady, she would give me wealth and glory, but I was too scared. The whole audience was in an uproar. This is not just a matter of murdering a noble lady, it also involves the assassination of the emperor. Moreover, Jiangning was using the prince's private seal. Does that mean the prince was secretly hiding assassins? For a moment, everyone had different expressions on their faces and began to make associations. The prince was quick to sense that something was wrong. This was all her doing. It has nothing to do with me. Of course it has nothing to do with you, because they are Lu Hezhi's people. I smiled without saying anything, secretly mocking him in my heart. The maid looked at the prince hesitantly, wanting to say something. The prince was anxious and annoyed and could not defend himself. "You lowly servant, why are you looking at me like that?" But the maid seemed to be frightened by him. She sobbed and fainted before she could finish her words. But it's enough.
10.
The affair between the crown prince and Jiang had spread all over the city, but Lu Chuanzhong probably had no time to care about it. Because a nursery rhyme was circulating in the capital, telling the story of the late queen and Prince Jing being forced to separate. Few people know that Lu Chuanzhong's mother was originally married to Prince Jing and was later married into the palace by the emperor. She was depressed all day long and died within a few years. A few months after she became queen, she became pregnant with Lu Chuanzhong. In other words, he might not be Her Majesty's child. The emperor's health has been getting worse recently. It is said that after hearing this nursery rhyme, he was so angry that he almost fainted. He immediately ordered a thorough investigation and issued an edict saying that the prince had poor moral character and punished him by imprisonment for 3 months. Lu Hazi had indeed secretly developed a great power and had done a foolproof job in this matter. Even the emperor's thorough investigation could not reveal any clues. During these 3 months, he first attracted the emperor's attention by virtue of his meritorious service in saving the emperor at the New Year's Day banquet, and then he submitted a series of practical suggestions, each of which was of great significance. It was only then that the prince's party discovered that a large number of people in the court had switched sides to the 7th prince. Things are really going to change. I looked at the gloomy sky and listened to Xiaowan's report. The war on the front line was losing ground, and my father was ordered to go to the battlefield just like in his previous life. The difference was that this time the person following him was not the crown prince, but the 7th prince. This was a good opportunity to win the hearts of the people, and the emperor gave it to Lu Haji. Lu Chuanzhong was still imprisoned in the Eastern Palace. Upon hearing this, he was so angry that he slapped Jiang repeatedly. 3 months ago, after their scandal was exposed, she was sent to the East Palace in a sedan chair with extremely perfunctory ceremonies. This time, without the support of the Jiang family, let alone a 10-mile red wedding dress, she doesn't even have a dowry made. Everyone said that Jiang had a cruel heart and was unwilling to go with her. Now the prince drinks every day, and the two of them are fed up with each other and torture each other. And I don't care about that anymore, because my wedding is approaching. Before that, I will go on the expedition with Lu Haji. 11. The cold air spreads through the golden watchtowers, and the cold light shines on the iron armor. Away from the glitz and glamour of the capital, I feel like I'm truly alive. Lu Haji and I worked together seamlessly and captured 3 cities in a row. The morale of the army was high, and news of victory was heard one after another, which was spread back thousands of miles away. However, the emperor suddenly fell ill and was no longer conscious, so he no longer mentioned the matter of taking back the military power. My father told me when I was little that I was born to be a general, but it was a pity that I was born into a girl's family. So what if I'm a girl? Without the worldly troubles, I can still lead troops to fight, protect the peace of the Jiang family, and spread the reputation of the Song dynasty. But I didn't expect the change to come so quickly. Our food supplies were cut off, spies appeared in the barracks, the strategic map was stolen, and all the stored food supplies were burned. When Lu Haji and I returned, all that was left in the city were frightened, hungry, and cold people. The intelligence scout said that it was Lu Chuanzhong's man. I knew that he would take revenge and would have a backup plan, but I didn't expect him to be so shameless. As the crown prince, he took advantage of the emperor's weakness and secretly colluded with the enemy and committed treason, causing our defeat in order to seize power and usurp the throne. He watched helplessly as Lu Haji's voice became louder and louder, but in the end he did not dare to guess the emperor's mind and pin his hopes on a letter of succession. Instead, he chose to do something that would bring disaster to the country. Smoke rose everywhere and the Turkic army was approaching the city. Lu Haji remained calm amidst the jagged swords and knives, and the situation was critical. He asked me to ask for reinforcements first, but how could I leave him to guard the city alone? Amid the deafening roar, he looked at me deeply and said, "Rulian, trust me for once." I know this is indeed the best way. So I rode away on my horse, and in the rolling dust, Lu Heji's back gradually became blurred. 12. Just as Lu Heji knew in his previous life, our dynasty has prospered for 100 years and has a solid foundation. How can we allow it to be overturned overnight? Even though Lu Chuanzhong fought desperately, he was defeated again and again by me who reacted in time. On the top of the city wall, his soldiers threw away their armor and weapons, filled with fear of failure, and he was covered in blood, no longer as dignified as before. Lu Chuanzhong, open up a base, hand over food and release the hostages, and you may be able to avoid death. His hair was disheveled and his expression was sinister. Rulian, how did we end up like this? Is it because of her? Only then did I notice that there was a woman next to him. Lu Chuanzhong was pinching her neck and lifting her to the city wall. This person was shaking like a sieve, helpless like a duckweed, and looked extremely pitiful. It turned out to be Jiang Ying. But that face was so pale and haggard. How could she look like a peerless beauty at all? I killed her. Will you feel relieved? Before I could stop him, he stabbed Jiang Ying through the heart with his sword. Blood spurted out and dripped all over the ground. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt ironic. It turns out that no matter how true love is, it cannot withstand suspicion and exploitation. The gentle boy in my memory was finally blinded by the desire for power. If he truly loved Jiang Ying a little, I would think more highly of him. Unfortunately, there are not so many ifs in this world. I closed my eyes and said, "Attack the city." The flags were flying, and the air was filled with murderous intent. I, wearing light armor, charged up to Lu Chuanzhong. This time, there was still a sword between us. But I was on top and he was on the bottom. I stabbed it with my sword, and it was as if I heard the sound of a nightmare that had lasted for years being shattered, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, revenge was finally taken. Lu Chuanzhong groaned in pain from his throat and stared at me intently. Ru Lian, if I were given another chance, I would never be fooled by this bitch. I now realize that you are the only one who truly treats me. I regret it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I tilted my head. It's too late. I gave you countless chances, but you couldn't seize them. Because you are not worthy. 13. The troops rushed to the rescue. The city was filled with smoke, and the air was full of the smell of blood, which was creepy. But Lu Heji held on. The price is blood all over the body and an uncertain life and death. I held him in my arms and sought medical treatment, but he suddenly woke up as if he were having a last glimmer of light. His pretty face was covered in blood, but he was still handsome. He looked at me as if he was looking at me less and less. Rurin, we agreed on this. Why did you forget everything? Blood was oozing from his lips and teeth. I didn't understand why, so I told him not to speak. But he insisted that he wanted to tell me a story. He was a lonely boy who met a drunk girl in the academy in the afternoon. She kissed him without knowing why and broke into his heart. He also said, "What's so great about the prince? Just replace him." She also said that she would dance with swords and fly the most fun kite for him. She was so high-spirited, and every word she said sounded pleasant, but her eyes only had room for the prince. The young man believed it and waited for the little kite with a heart full of hope for 20 years. Why don't you look at me? Lu Heji was in my arms, his body temperature gradually cooled down. He was trembling, mumbling, "Obviously, I am better than him. I am stupid." It turns out that when I was unaware, we had missed each other for a lifetime. Tears welled up in my eyes, and all I could say now was, "I'm sorry." He wanted to wipe my tears, but he was too exhausted to do so. He still managed to say, "You never need to apologize to me." The wind howls and the grass sways. Lu Heji looked at me, with stars twinkling in his eyes. I want to fly a kite." I was extremely anxious and wished the horse could run faster. "If you survive, I'll take you flying a kite." "Well, ahem. I still want to see you dance with the sword." "Okay. All good. This time, I will never break my promise again."
14.
I ran so fast that my horse broke and rushed to the post station overnight and finally saved Lu Heji's life. But the doctor said that he was able to hold on by himself. He still had hope, and it was this obsession that supported him. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. Before I finished listening, I was already in tears. After several more months, with my careful care, he finally recovered a lot. A lot has happened in these days. When the emperor passed away, it was discovered that the deposed crown prince had poisoned him, shocking the entire court. I hold great power in the Jiang family, but I have no desire for power. So, after maintaining the government, I will push Jiang Ying's child to the throne. He was only 1 year old, and from then on Lu Heji acted as regent to govern the country. But his subordinates reported to me that his master had already given orders that Lu Heji had no intention of taking the throne.
He only cares about me.
I make all the decisions. If he dies, the power he leaves behind will protect my family's safety. I have been accustomed to giving since I was a child, but no one has ever given me such sincere and passionate love, without any cost, sincere and unrequited. It all seems too beautiful to be fake. But Lu Heji told me with his actions that this is true. I owe him too much, and it will take me my whole life to pay him back. First of all, there will be a 10-mile red wedding ceremony, 3 letters and 6 ceremonials. The red candles are shining brightly. The wedding banquet was very busy, and I sat in the room to take a nap. Suddenly, I dreamed about things from my past life, which happened after my death. In the previous life, Lu Heji disappeared after his rebellion failed. Lu Chuanzhong suspected that he would make a comeback, but before he could wait, I had already died and turned into a ghost, following him. I saw him leading 3,000 assassins to charge into Chengqian Palace. Lu Chuanzhong scolded him for being stupid, saying that he had been lying in wait for so long, but was so anxious to come here and die. He just held my body carefully. The rain came in torrents, bringing terrible and tragic consequences. His blood flowed through my body. I was clearly seriously injured and on the verge of death. I was shaking with pain, but I was holding a dead person and whispering, "Rulian, I'm late. I'm sorry." He gently stroked my sunken face, my bloodless lips, his eyes full of pity and regret. His voice was soft, as if he was afraid to wake me up, as if he was talking to a little girl. Instead of a dead, stiff corpse of a woman who had wasted too long in the deep palace. It's no use blaming me. In the end, I couldn't save you. I could only die with you. Love and hate, broken families, and war. I carried all these things by myself, torturing myself with the yoke of guilt and suffering every day. After spending so many years in the cold palace, no one has ever said to me, "I'm sorry, Rulian, it's not your fault." I had even forgotten the existence of Lu Heji, but he remembered him so clearly that he risked his life for a little favor from his youth. Is it worth it? Lu Heji, are you stupid? The sky is hazy and my eyes are blurry with tears. 15. The dust of the past has disappeared without a trace, as if it was just a long and painful dream. When I opened my eyes, the candlelight was still flickering, and I felt peaceful and happy. And Lu Heji is still alive, as beautiful as a crane or a cloud, dressed in gorgeous clothes. But you're tired? He wiped away the tears from my eyes. I blinked and suddenly said, "I guessed it a long time ago. You are also reborn." During these months of getting along, he never concealed it, as if to make up for his regrets. "Is it worth it?" I asked. Lu Heji hugged me. His kiss was dry and soft, affectionate and gentle. "Rulian, I have waited 2 lifetimes for this moment. Do you think it is worth it? But I am not the bright and beautiful girl in your memory. Now I have wasted several years in the deep palace and have already been tossed around in the dark hell. Will you?" He interrupted me and said firmly, "You always are. In my heart, you will always be that spirited little girl." I was stunned. No words could describe how moved I was at that moment. "Try it again," I said to myself. So I hugged him. My breath blended with his. My tears were bitter, but my heart grew a new bud from the scar and returned to the bright spring of my youth. After a long while, Lu Hezi suddenly asked, "So, has our engagement come true now?" I smiled silently. "Real, truer than gold. The candlelight is soft and time is long. Nothing has happened yet, and there is still time for everything." End of full text.